Hi everyone, so today we're gonna make a Nintendo Switch pouch. So we're gonna jump right into it, start with a magic circle. If this step confuses you, there are a million videos on YouTube explaining it probably way better than I am. Then you're gonna chain 1 right away, and chain 2 more so you have a total of 3, and this 3 chain will act as your first double crochet. Next you're going to do 2 more, and this will be our first cluster. A cluster will have 3 double crochets in it, except for the first one, which will always be that chain 3. Then chain 1, and then you're going to do 3 double crochets in a row to make your next cluster. Then you're going to repeat that step 2 more times. Here I am starting the 3rd cluster, then the 4th. Then you're going to want to end on a chain 1. Now that you have all the clusters done, you're going to pull your magic circle tight. And if you haven't yet, do that last chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of the 3rd chain. Here's a little picture in case you get confused. I always find having visuals help me, so I drew a few pictures to help along the way. Here I'm just explaining that you start here, and once you go all the way around, you end up finishing your last cluster in the same space you started. Here I'm just making a quick slip stitch so I can get my string where I want it, which is in that space. You can of course attach it inside there. You can just chain the 3 on top, but I like it to be right where I want. Now we'll chain 3, which will again act as our first double crochet. Going back into that space and doing 2 more double crochets. And remember, we're not doing a corner here. We're going to end in this spot, so that's when we're going to finish off this corner. Now you're going to want to find that second chain space and put your hook in, do 3 double crochets, 1 chain, and 3 double crochets after, all in the same space, as this will be your first corner you're completing. And since this second round is all just corners really, you're going to repeat that process of 3 double crochets, 1 chain, and 3 double crochets after. But remember, you're not chaining 1 when you're going from the last cluster of a corner to the first cluster of the next one. And yay, you're done your first corner, and now we jump right into the other 2 corners. On screen, you'll find little instructions I hope will help. Then, like I said before, always remember to chain 1 before you slip stitch into the top of that 3rd chain. If you don't, you won't have a space to work in later on. Now I'm going to change colors, so make a slip knot. By the way, you do not have to change colors if you don't want to. Pick any of the corners, place your hook through it, add that slip knot onto your hook, pull it through, and then your color will be attached once you add a chain 1. Then add 2 more chains, which will be a total of 3, and it'll act as your first double crochet once again. Repeat the process of making your first cluster. As you can see, I'm holding the other string close to my work so that I can sew in my ends as I go. Find the space between the 2 clusters from the row before and add a cluster there. Again, that is 3 double crochets. Once you're at your corner space, do the 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 more double crochets. Then you finished off your corner. Here I'm just showing where we're at right now in case it helps you keep track. Now you're going to continue that pattern that you just did all the way around. Now we're at the final corner. Do 3 double crochets, chain 1, and slip stitch into the top of the 3rd chain once again. If you're confused, you can go back and rewatch the video. Here I am struggling with those slip knots. You will see me struggle with them throughout the video. It's not my strong point. Then chain 1 and you're gonna cut the string and pull that through. Bam! Done another row. Now you're gonna do 2 more rows. The only difference is you'll have an additional cluster each round. So I'm gonna add orange. And here's a little note in case you get confused where we're at. Additional pictures. And ta-da! You're done. Then you're gonna make 2 identical ones. Okay, no, don't panic. My granny squares look vastly different in size. This is only because I taught you how to do the granny square using a much larger hook. Now in the end, you want to have 2 sets. They can be the same or different. Now whether you have 2 or 4 done, you're going to do this next row and I'm going to show you how. It is very easy. So you're going to do the exact same pattern you had been on 3 sides of your granny square. Once you're done, I'll meet you back. So once you're at that spot, you're going to just put a cluster right into the corner. I drew a little picture and I hope that helps. And then you're just going to go along the 3 sides again and connect it the exact same way. I will again add a little picture in case this is confusing to understand. And here we are, and we're just gonna slip stitch into that top 3rd chain. And you're done. Ta-da! So the next color you're gonna do is going to be the last round, and it's gonna be the color of the flap. If you would like to separate the colors, you definitely can. I think it looks cute to be the same color. So again, start off in any corner, attach the color of your choice. Start off again as usual, chain 3, and do your first cluster into this spot, which will be the chain 3 and 2 double crochets. And you're going to continue this all the way up until this point, and I'll meet you back. Once you finish up this last cluster, you will yarn over, place your hook either through the space or through the little hole. Whichever you choose, it does not matter. Just remember, whichever way you did, you're gonna wanna do it across the exact same way. Continue the clusters around like you know, and then finish it off. Now fill the center. You can do this however you'd like, but I'll show you the way I did it. You're gonna chain 17 in total, a breakdown of 15, and then 2 to represent the first double crochet. It should be just a bit longer than the space needed because the first one's gonna be that double crochet. Yarn over and place your hook into that 3rd chain, double crochet, and do double crochets across till you get to the end. Then I like to leave a long tail so that you can sew it in. If this is something you're not comfortable with, you can always cut the tail short, tie it off, and add on a separate string. I like to add a knot at the end because the other end of this little row I find looks pointed, so I like them to look the same. Next, grab a darning needle. Specifically, this is my favorite size, but I'm going to use orange as I think it'll be a lot easier for you to see what I'm doing. Thread your string. I like to twist it like this. I find it much easier to get it into that little hole. Now I suggest starting the needle off right into that first cluster. Then I'm going to turn my work because I find it easier to look at. Now you're just going to freehand sew it into place. Here I show where I find the best places to place your needle. I personally think going through the back of the stitch looks a lot nicer, but any way you do it, it'll look great. Then on the adjacent side, I like to go between the two stitches. By doing this, I find the actual color, whichever one you pick, gets pretty hidden. Now you'll just see me do a few stitches, and the more you watch, I think it'll make more sense. Now that you're back at the top, I suggest going through that first cluster again. Now you can put a stitch through the middle of it, or you can just go right into that adjacent cluster on the other side like I'm doing here. Either will secure it nicely. I just choose to add an extra one at the top. Then you're gonna go back exactly how you did the beginning. Then at the end, I like to thread the needle through the back, tie off these ends real tight. Then repeat the last 3 steps on your other 2 granny squares. Then, once you have your 2 panels done, we are going to start creating this little piece that'll go all the way around. So I'm going to start off with this purple. Again, pick any color you'd like. Chain 5, double crochet into that 3rd chain, and then do 2 double crochets into the next 2 stitches. Once you're done, you're going to chain 2, and this is going to be for height. Then you're going to do 3 double crochets across. This is how it should look, and you're just going to continue this until you have a long piece that can wrap around. While crocheting, I just line it up to see how close I am. My estimated amount is 36 rows. Once you have enough, I like to add an extra row or 2, just in case. I say don't do it as usual because you're not going to do that chain 1 and pull through. You're going to leave this loop big. If it's too long, you can simply pull this loop and it'll undo those last rows. Now, when you start crocheting the pieces together, have that long loop at the end of your work. Then you're going to want to face the good side of your granny square up so that you won't see any of your stitches in the end. Here I'm adding a slip knot of the color I want. You can of course add it on however you'd like. Then I'm simply going to slip stitch all the way around. I'm not showing a lot of this process because slip stitches are the death of me. When you get to the corner, you can just simply pierce through that hole instead of going into the actual stitch, if that makes sense. This is a perfect example of why I added those 2 extra rows, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have had this perfect fit. Now I'm just slip stitching all the way to the end, and then you'll chain 1 and end off as you usually do. Now grab your next 2 granny squares, place the nice side inward. Then I'm just suggesting putting stitch markers in these places. And this is simply just a tip to help you stay on track so you don't suddenly do too many stitches on one of the sides. For those visual learners, I'll give you a little bit of example again. You're just going to slip stitch around. The placement does not matter. You just need to get back to the start. Once you're done going all the way around, we are simply going to inside this out. Inside this out? Is that how you say it? Now we're going to move on to crochet this little flap. To do this, I like to go from the middle and count out an even amount of spaces. Attach again a color of your choice. I'm going to do the border so it is yellow. I'm going to chain 3 to start, just like you did before. But this time, you're going to do your first cluster into the next space. Continue with clusters across until you get to this point. Once you're here, you're just going to do one last single crochet into this space. This is going to mimic the 3 chain we did at the beginning. Now you're going to just chain 1 and end off once again. Now you're going to attach your color again right into that chain 3 space we made the row before. Then we're practically going to mimic the row that we just did. So now you're going to do your first cluster into the next space. To give another visual, you're going to do clusters into each of these spaces, and I'll meet you back here. Now you can see the space we made with the double crochet previously. We're going to do 1 single double crochet into it just like we did in the previous row. Then chain 1 and end off that row. For the last row, you can start here or here. I'm going to insert my hook, attach my string once more, chain 1, then do 3 single crochets across this border. I'm doing this so the edge of our whole piece will be one color. Then you're going to start your 3 double crochet clusters right from that corner. And you're going to work them all the way to the other side till right before we get to that border. You'll see I'm pointing out the spaces you'll work into. To further explain, we'll be working those clusters right into those single double crochets that we made on the one side, which will be the same as the chain 3s we did on the other. Then once again, we'll do 3 single crochets across here and end off with a slip stitch into the yellow anywhere you'd like. Chain 1 and cut off that tail. Now that the flap is done, we're going to cut a piece of string. This is going to act as the loop. Find the middle here, or you can just estimate where it is. And you're going to place your hook into one of the middle stitches, pull one of the ends of that string through, then pull the next one. And little note, wherever you choose to place it, you don't want your tails to go through the same loop. Now just double knot that on the other side. Make sure to sew in these tails. Measure how far down your loop goes. Now pick any button of your choice and a piece of embroidery thread. Then thread your string through the button on either side. Make sure that your hoop will reach your button. Grab your crochet hook, poke it through, pull one of the strings through, then I move up a stitch and pull the second thread through. Then double knot off, and done! You're done! You did it! Ew. And that's it. You got a magical new case.